what can you expect today? First, I will give you an overview about IDSA and its position in the general world of data spaces. Then my dear colleague Sonia Jimenez will give you an update on the technology and certification aspects of IDSA, and finally my dear colleague Christoph Mertens will let you know about, well, how to bring IDSA achievements to the market, how to make it happen, how to let really data spaces grow. Well, what is my duty today? My pleasure today. I want to navigate you through my presentation. It's divided in 3 parts. First, I would like to reflect a little bit on the conceptual perspective of data spaces. Well, what is the role of IDSA and our achievements in this whole world of data spaces, in all the different trust frameworks, and how can we really ensure trust all together? It's not only us working in this field. Second, I would like to reflect a little bit on the technical perspective. So how can we really build these trust anchors that are needed, and well, why do we need something like certification and testing, what Sonia will explain later. And then I will give you a short update on IDSA, all the strategic news and the program for the rest of the year that you should be aware of. So data spaces are something new. It's a new paradigm for data economy, for sovereign, trustworthy data sharing. Well, we do not do them just for the sake of data spaces. We want to achieve something. We want to make more out of the data, and we want to share more data than is shared today. And with that, we really want to make data economy happen and benefit from combining data sets, and then really setting up rearms of a lot of data sets, a large pool of data, so that artificial intelligence and all the nice things of the future can really happen. And therefore we need, well, flourishing ecosystems. And data spaces are effectively these flourishing ecosystems, so where anyone can join in a very agile mode, be part of this data space, share data, let others participate in the value creation, or be him or herself part of this value creation, and really stimulate and erect data sharing ecosystems. And as you can see from the picture, these data space ecosystems are very vital, like a reef, and with all the fish and all the shellfish and all the anemones and corals. So this is really composed of a lot of different players. And on the other hand side, I've chosen the picture of a marketplace at the end. Well, most of the data space endeavors are related to economy, but this is not everything. It also serves society and helps us make well, Earth a better place. So therefore we can go on the market and buy something that we've never seen before. All that just helps us surviving. So therefore data spaces can really have different shades and shapes and serve a lot of different needs. At the core of data spaces is trust. So we need to combine as many data sets, as many data endpoints as possible, and the sum of it all well defines this data space. And well, this only works because participants in a data space can trust each other. Therefore, well, we obviously need something like a trust framework, and this trust framework, well, can be seen as a community of trust. So well, if you have a valuable data set, if you feel like, well, I have done a lot to make this data set valuable, or this stream of data valuable, then you want to be sure that you know what happens with it once you insert it into a data sharing ecosystem. Yeah, it's like parents who well, leave their kids well to the world and let it grow and say, okay, well, you can now ride with your bicycle on the street. Well, you really need well, a lot of trust to do that. And when we go to data spaces, the essential question that companies or, well, any individual has to answer is, well, will I become part of that data space endeavor or not? So will I plug in or not? I must be sure that I can trust this ecosystem. And this calls for a lot of things that need to be in place. And therefore, we should talk about data spaces and trust frameworks and what IDSA and our friends in other organizations are doing. Well, when we talk about data spaces, well, okay, what do we need to really set up? Well, if you want to make data economy happen, then you need to, well, insert data somehow. So you need like a gateway or some element where you provision the data set. And at the end, you want it to be sure that the data is along this whole value chain or the whole value network, well, sticking to the obligations that you have given to this data set. So you want to know what happens along the whole data supply chain with the data set. So we need a secure end-to-end data supply chain, data exchange. This calls for trusted parties, so you should know, well, who is working with my data, who is using my data with an algorithm. And then we definitely need to make the FAIR principles work. So, well, someone should know that, should find your data set. It should be accessible, and it should work with others, so that then at the end you can monetize data. And if you want to monetize data, you should know, like, okay, should someone pay for it, or is it free of use, which license, and can you only see my data set on Tuesdays or only 3 times? So we have to talk about usage policies, and at the end, usage control and enforcement. And maybe you would even add algorithms which work with your data set. So we also need to talk about remote execution. So if we want to realize these data spaces, we need technology, software components, protocols, whatever, which can fulfill exactly these needs. And this leads us to, well, the fact that data spaces are a holistic challenge. So what I just explained, this is definitely a technical thing, but there's so much more. A lot of agreements have to be taken. We also need to focus on legal agreements. We need to focus on operational agreements. We need to make sure that this is working well together. Interoperability needs to be ensured, and you also need to have someone who maintains all the different services and components in there. So what you can see here, it's not only a functional view on data spaces. It also encompasses, well, a holistic view on data spaces. So business, legal, operational, functional, technical, and maybe even ethical dimensions need to be respected when we talk about data spaces. And that is why we need to talk about rule books and all these agreements. So you can see the IDSA rulebook, the yellow paper, the top at the bottom left. But there are other rulebooks out there. For example, the rulebook for fair data sharing from Citra, which is remarkable and well, compatible with our view. And all of this together creates the full picture of data spaces. Another aspect that we need to focus on is also, well, the soft infrastructure where all these components run on. So it's not like everything happening in the space. It is grounded somewhere. It runs on devices, in data centers, in the cloud. And this is exactly what GaiaX is taking care of. So how to set up such a federated soft infrastructure, a federated cloud infrastructure based on European value in a sovereign manner. And well, this is a perfect fit with what we are doing with IDSA. You know that we are with GaiaX from the very beginning, and you can see here the nice GaiaX, and this explains the world of data spaces. So GaiaX takes care of the bottom part, so setting up this federated infrastructure, and also making the link to the data spaces world, which is at the top via the GaiaX Federation services. And that is where we have to interact a lot, and that is exactly what we are doing from IDSA to make sure that the cloud world and the data spaces world are working together. And once we have set up this infrastructure, you can instantiate IDS connectors in there, so these data endpoints, and then you can build up this data space, as I've mentioned, and you can start sharing data. And have a look at this picture here. There's also a document on our website which explains it much more in detail. If we think that further, we come up with a governance stack for data spaces. So when you talk about a data space and you want to set up this vital ecosystem for any domain, cross-sectoral use of data, then, well, we need to define some standards. So at the very bottom, we need a governance of a combination of standards and architecture of standards, which are used by any data space initiative, so that the data sharing works across all these data spaces, so that all the data sets are interoperable and can be used if you want to. So therefore, we talk about global standards and reusable building blocks with proven interoperability and compatibility. So at this bottom layer, IDSA is working, GaiaX is working, Zitra, iShare, all our friends in the Data Spaces Business Alliance, in-team data spaces are working on that level. And then we ease the life for domain-specific data space endeavors, which can be seen in this middle layer. So there, well, in the automotive domain, data spaces look different than in the tourism domain, than in the energy domain, but they use a lot of common building blocks. And therefore, we, in this middle layer, standard where possible, specific where needed, is the motto. And then, based on these data spaces, we can really see flourishing ecosystem which create value for everyone and a better future. So this was the first part of my presentation, and I would now like to dig deeper in the technical perspectives. That is where we as IDS have a strong focus on. So how can we build these trust anchors that I've talked about? And therefore, I would like to reuse the slide that I've just shown. So the black part in the middle, well, this is a generic data space. Yeah? So if you have a look at any data space, and you might even have it as a really, well, big viewpoint. So any data sharing scenario looks like that. You have a data provider, data consumer, and you have some services in between that you need. So a data space in the automotive domain looks like that. In the agricultural domain looks like that. In the cultural heritage domain, and well, even Facebook looks like that. So therefore, if we want to build data spaces based on the same soft infrastructure, then we should take this understanding of data spaces as a given, as a standard, as a generic archetype that can be used. So, and because this picture shows that we can, all the components, all the functional elements that we need to make data economy happen. So as mentioned before, secure end-to-end data exchange, trusted parties, monetization of data, data models, information models, semantics, remote execution, so that we can insert algorithms and whatever, and usage control and enforcement, so that we really can make sure that only this happens to your data what you want to. Okay, this is a nice story. How do we make it happen from the technical perspective? Well, one core element is the IDS Connector, and that is what you see at the top right part of the slide. I would like to dig deeper in this. Yeah? So if you want to set up a data space, you obviously need data, and this data must be, well, provided and inserted in this data space somewhere. And this is the data endpoint and what we call the IDS Connector. And as mentioned before, the data space is the sum of all of these data endpoints, and if all of these data points are built according to the IDS reference architecture and take the shape of an IDS connector, then we can ensure that all these nice features that I've just mentioned can really be fulfilled. And well, that is what we make sure, because back to my first slides, you want to know what happens to your kid when you say, okay, you can drive with your bicycle on the street. You want to know, well, is everything safe? Is it fine? Can you really do that? Well, okay, so certification is definitely base of trust on that end. And that is exactly what we are doing in IDSA. We are not building code. We are not building commercial offerings. We do not build software. What we do in IDSA is we define the reference architecture, so the reference for any data space, so the black picture before, with all the functional features that are needed to make data economy happen, and we describe it in a generic way. And the centerpiece of this is the IDS connector. And then, so this is what you see at the left part. This is what we're doing in the IDS Association. And then all our members and non-members, so technology companies out there, system integrators, they build solutions based on our reference on this standard. And there will be a variety of these solutions. And what we make sure via the certification scheme and via reference testbeds, that all of these components are built as a company has promised to build it, and they stay interoperable. That is our promise as IDSA. So we define the RAM, we describe all the features of the RAM in clear certification criteria in the IDS certification scheme. It can be tested automatically in the testbed, and then someone else builds any building block, a connector, or other components which are compliant to this. IDSA, we take care of 1 and 2, and the market takes care of number 3. And this is what we have defined. So we have 3 different types of connectors defined. You know about that. You can see at the bottom left part the architecture of this, and well, more the software view on the connector concept. And then the connector can have different shapes. It can be instantiated on a mobile phone, on a sensor, in a completely cloud-native environment, or on an API-based solution. However, as long as it's following the RAM, the certification criteria, and is compliant to the reference testbed, then we can certify it. And that is exactly what's happening. This is our value proposition as IDSA. I've mentioned it several times before. I don't read it once again. So if you see in some ecosystem IDS connector, you can, well, be sure or rely that all these features are respected. And this is a software view on the data space connector. So the IDS connector, as it's described in the RAM 4.0, these are the features that an IDS connector really fulfills. So we very often stop talking about the very technology. Today I want to talk about the technology because that is exactly where the magic happens. So if we talk about an information model, okay, there needs to be a place where an information model can be understood. So the semantics, there must be an ODRL policy language which can be executed or understood in this connector. You need to, well, check different identities. So from central identification scheme like X509 certificates, or the more modern version, decentralized identities, verifiable credentials. The IDS connector in version 4 can handle both. So therefore it's compliant with Gaia X and other endeavors on that end. It needs to, well, say like, okay, I provide data of this kind. So this is the description of the data. This is the metadata information. Well, you need to bring it to a federated catalog as it is designed in Gaia X. Yeah, exactly. That is what the IDS connector can do. And we talk about usage control. So you need to know, okay, this person may use my data and this company not, or only this part of the data set. Well, exactly. So this consent mechanism, this authorization can be given via the IDS connector. And for example, it can be progressed in an iShare satellite. So read through all these features and functionalities in IDS connector. This is exactly what I mentioned before. If you want to make data economy happen, you need some features. and well, this piece of software can deliver them in a standardized manner. That is exactly what IDSA is doing, and we make sure via, well, very clear criteria, 156 to be clear, that this really happens. And we are so happy that we have launched the IDS certification scheme in June, and we have at the same time started the IDS certification award so that we can, well, trigger the market to build technology based on what I just explained. And I'm happy to announce here the 6 winners of our IDS certification award. So it does not mean that they are ready, but they now start to go through the IDS certification process, and very soon we will award also the certificate. And what we can see here is that we have great companies which represent a big share of the market. So we have the Dutch ecosystem around smart connected supplier network with TNO and Tech2B. So they are like a trailblazer data space from the very beginning. We have the Finnish ecosystem around BTT. We have the Chinese ecosystem around WeTech. Then we have engineering. They have the True Connector based on FireWare open source technology. So this is also covering a huge ecosystem. And well, finally, Deutsche Telekom, which start this endeavor of IDS certification with the Eclipse Data Space Connector. So there's a lot of rumor out there about the Eclipse Data Space Connector. Well, the Eclipse Data Space Connector is an IDS connector. As mentioned before, the IDS connector is a generic description of this connector. And there's a variety of these. So currently you already see 6 different connectors which will be available at the market. And the Eclipse Data Space Connector is one of them. And this is representing a big ecosystem. We are in very intense contact with the Eclipse Data Space Connector Consortium, and to make sure that this is really a success on the market, as well as we are in contact with the others. So time is running, and I would like to leave some room for my colleagues, but I will not stop sharing some updates with you. So I really run through it. Well, this is the current overview of our members. So they are the backbone of IDSA. They are making all the nice reference architecture description, the certification scheme, the rule book, everything that we're doing at IDSA happen. We have more than 135 members. We are still growing. We are gaining more and more countries, and definitely we have the big markets covered. So China, Japan, Europe, the US, and others following. As we are doing so many things, it is sometimes difficult to keep overview of what we are doing, and it's not only that the connector technology that is defined by IDSA. It's more. There are also the essential services, so the metadata broker, the identity mechanism, DAPS and Paris, also an app store, the vocabulary provider, and the clearinghouse. So there are a lot of other components. So you see more the technology part at the top of our IDS landscape, and you should know that a lot of this is already inserted in vital ecosystem in reality, and is already like doing business and it's operational. So therefore we have a lot of running components, and we have a lot of activities where our members and we give support. So there's a lot of offerings for trainings, and other services where you can get familiar with IDSA, like the Plug Fest or the Integration Camp. And there are a lot of data spaces where some of these components in completely different maturity levels are integrated. So this diversity is represented with the IDSA radar. And this is a chapter on its own. Christoph will mention a bit, but please have a look at our radar. So the IDS landscape is already impressive, and with the certification scheme and the award, it will even grow. A short update, and I try to, well, have one sentence on per bullet point. Please have a look at the last phase of the OpenBI project. There we are currently assessing and collecting more building blocks for this holistic view on data spaces that I've shown before, and we try to collect all the elements, all the technologies, all the solutions which are available in one repository. On 9th of November, we have an event in Sofia in Bulgaria, organized by our dear friends from Gate Institute, the IDSA hub in Bulgaria. Please have a look at it and join us in Sofia. This will be great. Then the Data Spaces Support Center will be officially launched on October 13th. We also try to, with our friends, try to share all the knowledge and give support to any data space initiative out there via the Data Spaces Support Center. This will start in October, and then, well, hopefully we will see much more data spaces flourishing. In Germany, there's a great study in the health domain available since 2 days. Please check our website on it. We have the French startup, which is no longer a startup, DAWEX. They are doing a lot of buzz in the field of data exchange and marketplaces. We are very close with them, well, since 3 years, and we work closely together with them to see that we can show the value of IDS value proposition for data marketplaces. We are also happy that we could formally make happen what I showed before with Gaia-X. Sebastian Steinbus, our CTO, is now co-chair of the Data Exchange Working Group in Gaia-X, and with these and a lot of other activities like the Data Space Business Alliance, we are really getting close and making sure together with Gaia-X and our other friends to make the big vision of data spaces happen. We will show a cool demonstrator on the Gaia-X Summit. I don't tell you more, but it will be great and resolve a lot of questions. We extend the testbed and we will enlarge the radar, but this is for Christoph and Sonia to detail. A lot is going on towards the rest of the year, so we will have the opportunity to have a lot of touch points. So see us on some of these well, virtual and face-to-face events. Happy to see you there. If you want to have your say on IDS reference architecture, this is the release cycle. We have a change process, so if you have any issue, go to our GitHub repository and raise the issue there, and then it will be resolved, put to the backlog, and integrated in the next version of the reference architecture. We will add a bit more to the next reference architecture version 4.2 probably. So we will set up the IDS Meta protocol. We have set up the IDS Standardization Coalition, and well, we have a formal change management board. I would like to focus on the Standardization Coalition. If you are active in the field of standardization, join us there. We already teamed up with IEEE W3C, with BDVA, with our national hubs. This is very important to move data space standardization, as I've mentioned before, to the next level, and especially on the global level. So especially our friends from Japan, which are dialed in, let us team up there. We already have the hook with Japan, but also other countries, other continents. Please join that activity so that we really can standardize data spaces. The big thing is on 28th of September in Spain. We have the Data Spaces Discovery Day in Barcelona, organized together with NTT Data, with ITOS, with SEAT and T-Systems. It's a full day of data space with a focus on Spanish ecosystem, but I think it's of value for everyone out there. So have a look at it. You can join us in Barcelona, but you can also dial in remotely. But as we have workshops, it's a good idea to join us in Barcelona for this full day of data spaces, where you already can see that you cannot distinguish and well, keep data spaces in a country, right? So we have this great initiative from NTT Data where they combine Japanese data space with a Dutch and a German one, and we will extend it to Spain. So, well, data spaces are a global thing. That's it, and let's make it happen. Yeah, once again, visit us in Sofia. I'm looking forward to see you in November 9th there. And if you find the time, and if you have any components which could be used in a data space, let us know about it. We have a clear process where we collect the building blocks. I've mentioned it before in the course of the OpenDI project. The next workshop is on 31st of August and a webinar on 16th of September. But please go on, get in touch with Sylvia, go on the website. You can there's a survey, and you can drop all your ideas there, all your components, and then we will show it and display it in the building block catalog of data space components. Well, I think we are all data space pioneers. We all believe in data spaces as an enabler for Europe's future wealth. Well, probably for, well, global wealth. Let's really move what we have been doing to a global level as a standard. I'm looking forward to it. Let's pioneer for the future of data spaces. Thanks a lot. And with that, I hand over to my dear friend and colleague, Sonia Jimenez. She will let us know more about technology and certification aspects. Thanks a lot. And Sonia, the stage is yours.
So yes, I'd like to give you an overview on what we're working on from the technology and architecture team. So as Lars already presented, we are working on many different assets together with our partners, and they need to be further developed. So our core asset from the tech team is the reference architecture model. We released the version 4 in the Hannover Fair, and now it's in GitHub. It's a public repository that anyone can access and anyone can contribute. And it's important to mention that this is a 4th version, but it's a living artifact. So we continue developing it. We need to, we're trying to simplify the way to align on our different assets and to contribute to them, because as I said, we have the reference architecture model as the main or core asset, but then we have the component specifications that need to be aligned to it. And then we have the testbed that uses the components specifications. So we have several components that are part of the current testbed. We will continue adding more components to it, and for that, we need the component specifications. And then a 4th asset, the certification criteria. So we need to have the components available on our testbed so that we can test them. So we need to define the specifications, we need to define the certification criteria, we need to be able to test the components in the testbed so that those components can be certified. So this is becoming a little bit tricky now with so many different assets. And our goal is to make sure we are aligned when we develop those assets. And the way we're doing this is we're defining a process to gather change requests for the different assets. So anyone who's specialized in one asset or one topic within one asset can bring their contributions, their ideas, their suggestions in the form of a change request, and those change requests will be evaluated and will be, assessed, and will be aligned among all the assets to make sure that all the assets evolve and are developed in the same direction. So this is something we're establishing now. This will also help us, all these change requests, these suggestions, enhancement ideas will help us continue building our technology roadmap. So as I said, we have version 4 of the reference architecture model, and we are heading towards version 5. What should be included in there? We will have minor releases of the reference architecture model every quarter and one major release per year. In order to make this a little more visible, or in order to make it easier to contribute to it, we've also defined a list of items within the reference architecture model, so that it's clearer where we are heading towards and where we need contributions for the different items. For instance, one of the items could be usage control or identity management or data quality, things like this. So we have listed all those items so that somebody who's can contribute in one specific area knows how to do so. And as I said, we will gather all the requirements, we will align them, and we will evaluate them, and we will see how we add them to our technology roadmap. So yeah, this is something we are starting to work on now, and we will continue working in the coming months. Another very important asset, as Lars already presented, is the certification. We launched version 1.0 at the Hanover Fair. That version 1.0 includes component certification and operational environment certification. In the case of component certification, it's for connectors, trust level 1. And in the case of operational environment certification, it also includes self-assessment, and so for trust level 1 and 2. So this is only version 1.0. It's already there and available. It's a really important step for us because we are always talking about bringing trust to the data spaces, and we were defining how to do this, and we knew we had to do this with our certification scheme and a certification process, but now it's finally happening. So now we're going to have the first certified connectors in the coming months. So they are starting the process now. So in the coming months, we will be able to really bring those certified connectors into the data spaces initiatives. So we're bringing this trust component to the data spaces initiative. So this is a major step for us and for our partners, because we've been making this promise that we're going to bring trust, and now it's finally happening. So it's a really important step for us. Talking about different assets, so the IDS Reference Testbed, this is the asset where components are tested. So all those candidates to certification have deployed the testbed, have tested their connector, have gone through the user guide, and all the tests have been successful. And this is also first version of the reference testbed. This will continue evolving. So, and in two different directions maybe. So one direction is for certification purposes. We will continue adding components. So we will add the clearinghouse, we will add the Paris, trusted connector, and so on, so that we can test all the different components in this reference testbed. But then our partners may use the testbed for different purposes as well. So some of them are offering the testbed as a service. So other companies can bring their own developed connectors and test them and make sure they develop them correctly and they meet all their requirements to be certified. Another use of this testbed is to create deployment scenarios. So this can be the starting point to build a use case around it. So we can create a data space starting with this reference testbed, because we can already test how to send data from one connector to the other, how to get a digital identity, and so on. So I think in the coming months, it's going to be very interesting to see how our partners make use of this testbed. As I said, either only for internal testing purposes, or to offer it as a service, or to create deployment scenarios with it. Okay, and that's basically the information I wanted to share with you, that we continue developing the next steps for certification, so we can add more components and more trust levels to it in the coming months. And this will all be aligned with the rest of our assets and with our technology roadmap. Okay, so in case there are some questions, I would hand over to Christoph or back to Lars.
There we go. Perfect.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Lars, for these updates. I have now a few minutes left to walk you through some updates from perspective of adoption. And I think you all now heard a lot of technical insights in what we do, also with whom we alliance and what is happening. Adoption really focuses not so much on the technical part of the story, but more on the people. So the adoptionists, the people that take the standard, that implement it into solutions that are out there at the market, are really the ones where we care about, whom we care about when it comes to adoption. And I think you here in the call are a large part of this community already. I don't go into the details of all slides, but I already can teaser next week, Thursday, we have a Q&A session with 1 hour of time where we can in-depth discuss all aspects, technical and non-technical. It's lucky for me that Lars and also Sonia already mentioned a lot of the things that I brought here with you. So the certification award with the 6 winners, I don't have to go into these details now. I'm just very glad that we found these awesome candidates to have first certified connector solutions at the market in short time. The other thing about the adoptions, about you, is that we got active not only this year, but already since we are there, being in contact with you. And this is a huge thank you to the community that is so hardly keeping contact with us, who is driving the topic, building the standard, co-creating things, driving solutions. So this is really awesome to have every one of you on board with us all the time on this journey. It would be very hard for most of the adoptions, for most of you out there, if you would be alone on this journey. So a lot of the adoption things are about community, about bringing the right people together, about having people and companies like the implementation partners with you on that journey. Knowledgeable companies, knowledgeable teams that help you to understand the technical aspects, the business aspects, that set up workshops with you to figure out yet the next use case that drives forward data economy. These implementation partners are always there for you to work on IDS on all different levels that you could imagine, starting from understanding the general topic all the way up to building your own data space and selecting technical operators for your data space. And everything in between is something that our knowledgeable implementation partners already do with you in several projects that are running out there. To become an implementation partner, if you think about yourself, you are part of the research side either, where you guide consortium projects through the process of building data spaces and use cases, or if you are on the business side, it doesn't matter, reach out to us and we figure out a way to see if you will be the next implementation partner here on our list of partners. A next group that helps to facilitate for different communities out there the process of building solutions are our facilitators. Since our journey for data spaces started here in Germany, here in Europe, a lot of these parties currently are representing European countries. Within these countries, they are our link as head office to national political levels, to national companies, especially SMEs, because it's always required to have a lot of knowledge about national activities in order to get your way through to companies that mainly operate on national level. But still, this is very important to get them on board of the story and not lose them and think in 5 to 10 years about how to get companies on board. This has to happen now, and our hub facilitators are our partners that do this job already. And I can already announce that we are about to launch the next hub facilitator in Poland, so that is great. And we are also in talks with international partners from Japan, from Brazil, from China to bring this on the next level here. Competence centers are also part of this story. Since we only have 1 hub facilitator per country, there are more competence centers that are national links that have specific knowledge from specific domains, from specific networks, to also get you on board. And this is also a community that is growing and supporting the entire process. Last but not least, from this community perspective, our communities that are out there up and running, doing great things, like new publications that the industry community came up with, or also the health activities. And I'm thrilled to already be able to tell you that on October 20th, we will have a data spaces dialogue where you will get yet the next insights into what is happening in the health sector. And this is really a game changer. I'm totally looking forward to talk with you about this and present to you the activities here. Also, the mobility anthology from our mobility community will get refurbished and get a new phase, new chapters, reworked chapters with new numbers. This is something that you can expect in the upcoming weeks. So stay tuned in terms of our publications here. Now let's get to the bottom part. So that was about community, about people and networks. A very quick run through the assets that try to support either one of these communities and also you. So basically all of these things that I want to present you here in a very short time are accessible or are about to be accessible to you. So you don't rely on neither us nor on any partner. So you could go on your data space journey on your own. One very important part here is all the technical aspects that you learn about will have to come to life. And even though when we started like almost a decade ago, we thought it will be enough to have a reference architecture, someone reads it and puts it to code, we now are very well aware of the fact that real-life implementations, reference implementations, blueprints for this are mandatory. Sonia already talked about the test bed, but this is of course not where it stops. So we have to build minimum viable data spaces that incorporate more of the infrastructure components, that also try to inspire you with stories from domains, from use cases, from the real market, in order to have the more reliable base for the explorations that you are doing. And a minimum viable data space is something where we now are in the phase of setting up a committer group to the components that are not part of the testbed yet, but that have to become part of it, like clearing houses, vocabulary provider, app stores, all of these things that are defined by our standard have to go in there and have to be accessible for you. So this is something where we set up a committer group. If you are implementing secretly, without us knowing, infrastructure components for data spaces, let us know, become part of this committer group, and let's help to get this out there. Part of this minimum viable data spaces, so when it gets concrete, when companies take the current testbed and in the future the MVDS, the way they deploy it, the way they make use of the components is always very specific to the company, to the use case, to the surrounding that they're encountered. And this is what we call when they solve the deployment scenario. So a description of how they did it, which technology went in there, which connector in which version. This is what we describe in the deployment scenarios. And we already have a first inspiration here by our member TopX that you can use to get inspired on your own and see how the technical challenges of coming up with use cases and data spaces worked out for them. And again, here, a shout out, if you have found out your very own specific way to solve technical issues, let us know. Become part of this overview and let others know how it works. Talking about overviews, but also here, Lars already introduced this new concept of ours that we will bring out to you in short time, the IDS Landscape. So it's very easy to get confused with all the technical aspects, all the partners, use cases, data spaces, different maturity levels. All of these things that are happening out there are very confusing if you don't have the right overview. And this is why we took the job to create such an overview. And we started with a prototype that you already saw earlier from Lars to build such an overview. It will bring to you in one dashboard insights on who is involved in which part of technical implementations, who brought already out their deployment scenarios, who made use of the MBDS and built their own version of things. Where can I find services and support? All of these things will go to this overview, and therefore it will be a great tool for all our implementation partners, hubs, ourselves, and hopefully also you. Last but not least, the radar. I think a lot of you already know this radar. It's a tool we came up with already a time ago, and it's a growing community of use cases and data spaces that you can explore here, where you can dig into details all the way up to getting in contact with use cases and data spaces that you can find in here. And just as a teaser, there will be a new version of the radar together with the DSPA, with the partners from the DSPA, that will make this even bigger. And I'm super thrilled about this process here, and I cannot wait for having this tool out there. One example, and with this I hand over to Lars back. One use case example that really catch my eye throughout this year was the example of NTT, Omron, SCSN, Fraunhofer, Sovity, TNO coming together, making use of Gaia-X, the European way how to interpret cloud solutions and data spaces, IDSA, and the Japanese way to interpret the standards, Data-X, and brought it together and set up a use case. And these are things that I think are really inspiring to all of us. And yeah, if you want to know more, join us next week for the Q&A session. And I would say with this, let's have a look into the questions. Let's wrap it up. Let's have a look on the clock, on the watch. We have a few minutes left, so for questions, answers, I really think we can take a few minutes. Okay, let me see. We have a question. During the presentation, you referred to remote execution. And the question is if we can tell more about the status of this feature. A question by Eric Duby. I think that goes into the technical direction and therefore into the direction of Sonia. Sonia, do you want to take this question? Do you think it's handleable in the last 3 minutes of the session, or should we postpone it to next week?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was me mentioning it. I don't see the room here. Now I see the question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which presentation it was, and I'm not sure.
Okay. Remote execution. Yeah. Then I would suggest, so Eric, either so you're unmuted or able to unmute, either you step on stage and explain the question, or you join us next week,
Yes,
1st of September.
Do you hear me?
Yes,
now?
we can.
Oh, yes. So thank you. Nice update. Thank you very much. In the presentation of Lars, there was this reference to this feature regarding remote execution. And I was willing to know a little bit more about this feature and the status.
Okay. Lars, do you want to react to this? Join me here on stage. I step aside so they can.
So I hope you can hear me. Okay. Well, let's discuss that more in detail. So remote execution is a feature of the connector since the very beginning. And well, this is a longer discussion. So when we talk about data sharing, then there are different options how to make that happen. So we know so you can keep the data where it is and have like an algorithm which is traveling. You can bring all the data to a central point and have the algorithm there. We have the concept of data visiting. We know about federated machine learning. So the question is always, where do you process the data? And well, this is the discussion. So do you go more to the edge or to the cloud and centrally? So what we need to do if we want to set up a standard is we need to make everything happen. So it should be the user to decide well, how to use the data and how to process the data. So therefore, the connector needs to also tackle the fact that someone else can send a piece of software, an algorithm to a connector and run it there and still control it. So not only controlling the data from somewhere else remotely, but also execute code remotely. And so this is really a quite high level and complicated things. So if you want to know more, discuss more, I would hand you over to Sebastian Steinmus, our CTO, and well, also the colleagues from Fraunhofer have made a lot of groundwork on that end. So I hope that I could explain a little bit so what this term remote execution could target us at. Okay, so now I'm here at the computer with all the questions. Okay, Eric, so anyway, happy to follow this up. And now it's already 12 o'clock. And I do not see more questions. So, well, this is a good coincidence. And thank you very much also for these detailed questions, because that is exactly what we should do in such a webinar. Let's discuss, and also for us, where do we need to put a focus on, where do we need to be more clear. So thanks a lot for everyone being here today. 2 remarks. Let's build a global standard. So therefore, please, if you're working on something, share it with the ecosystem, with the community. So we need to know what is going on, what are your requirements, what are the challenges, and then let's work together on it to resolve it. Because if everyone, if we find great solutions that work in a certain domain, well, this will not lead really to the data economy that we want to have. We need to really find something which is a standard. This lower stack for data space is a soft infrastructure, and we have to build all of this together to harmonize it, and then it will ease the life for everyone. So let's build data spaces. I'm looking forward to, well, do a lot with all of you together. Thanks for being here today. Have a great day or great night, and well, see you on some of the occasions in the weeks and days to come. See you. Take care. Goodbye.
Thanks, Lars. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.